I welcome all of you to the class, and I am following the SOP since I'm a little bit away from you, so I'm removing my mask. Okay, this is not advisable. This is not good, but just to help you to see whether I am angry or not. Okay, on a certain thing. So, today we will be talking about the scientific method. This is the continuation of a lecture which I have started during the laboratory class, because it was related to the laboratory work. It was related to our ability that how we observe things. And I will going to share my screen with you. And I believe it will going to be shared. You should be able to see my screen, and I will going to take all of you out the camera. That's it. And you can only see me. Okay, here we go. So this is the lecture which I have shared on the other day, and I was talking about the concept we are having about the scientist. And if you remember, that was a wonderful description I received from my students. The scientists are look like this, they are just look like this. None of the description matches with me. Am I right? Develop our knowledge. Remember, there are certain types of knowledge. You people already studied about those things. Acquired knowledge. The knowledge which we have earned during our lifetime, acquired knowledge. There is another type of knowledge which is called as the revealed knowledge. The knowledge which came to us through scriptures, through writings. Sina basina, heart to heart. A father telling the story to his kids, and the kids are getting the stories, and then they are repeating the same story to their kids. And that is how we came to know about a lot of fairy tales and folklores, a lot of things. So knowledge are disseminating in different ways. It's because of our abilities during our lifetime. We are earning knowledge, we are developing knowledge. So if I develop something during my lifetime, if I earn a knowledge during my lifetime, it's that knowledge is present in a bucket into my head, and you are supposed to be my student, and I'll transfer all those knowledge present inside my bucket to your head. I might be able to transfer the knowledge, and I will be creating a duplicate copy of Dr. Mustafa. Am I right? It's like a copy paste, and that is not what knowledge wants me to do. We will have a lot of Dr. Mustafa, and that is not required, because Dr. Mustafa is already there. He is good enough. Dunya ko aur nahi chahiye. Dunya ko aap chahiye, whatever, whoever the hell you are. So transferring knowledge is just one way of increasing the ability to think, or increasing the ability to develop more knowledge. But the developing knowledge is your own practice. It's something which you do by yourself, independent of the things. You need to grow your own knowledge. You should be able to understand my concept, which I'm trying to explain to you, is that when all of us, if we plan to go for a movie, cinemas are closed, by the way, from today, so we can't go. But if we can try here as well. Nobody knows that we are watching a movie. Wonderful. So if we try a movie here, all of us, like a 30-minute short movie, we are all watching together. And at the end of the day, we all will going to develop our own understanding about that movie. Agar hum sabse kaha jaye ki let's explain that movie according to your understanding, we might have different types of explanation, or different types of descriptions about the same content. That's what I'm talking about. That whenever you learn things, you grow your knowledge, your own independent knowledge, and that is the target of every instructor. That is the target of a university professor, to help you, to assist you to grow and develop your own knowledge. Because who knows, whatever the knowledge you are developing and growing might be much better than me, might be much better than the others. So that is the only way we can grow intellectually. Otherwise, we will be a society like Dr. Mustafa, then Dr. Mustafa, then Dr. Mustafa. I mean, there are certain ways I have learned during my teenagers and during my lifetime. If I started believing that these are the only ways I should teach, I'm wrong. I should allow you to learn and to grow, beyond me. So that is the purpose. So you should know the karma. You should know the mantra. Karma is not it's a wrong word. You should know the mantra, that what are the things I should do in order to grow and develop my knowledge. And I told you the first thing, you should give respect to these unfortunate people. They are the scientists. The same picture we can draw in our minds. Isolated, weird, jealous, jealous nahi, huh? Anyway, so this is the thing which came into our head when we imagine about science. These are the people who are growing new knowledge. These are the people who are contributing in the knowledge of the planet. We are contributing in the knowledge of human race. They are creating new things. They're not like following the things, whatever we told, whatever we have learned. This is, you can say, a learned knowledge or transformed knowledge. But there are other knowledge which is required in order to grow as a society, in order to grow as a race. So scientists are the ones who are actually trying to develop new knowledge. But how they are doing? We believe that these people are like working on, working on animals, and they are converting them, putting things inside the animals and converting them into Ninja Turtles like this. But this is not very much true. But every new knowledge, it starts with a question. And question depends on the ability of you, that how you can observe about a certain thing. We are living with a certain environment, and we can observe things, whatever happening is going on, whatever is going on around us. And we all observe those things in different ways. Among us, the people who have an ability to see the things in a better way, who have the ability to observe the things in a better way, or in a more, I must say, different way, they are the ones who can come up with a lot of questions. If you found something interesting out there, if you found something unusual out there, if you found something which is not there, and that is the stuff which can trigger a very beautiful thing in your head, which is called as the question. That is why I always emphasize, always push you to ask questions, because that is the start of everything. That is the start of a new knowledge. So whenever you found something very unusual, this will trigger the question. And when you try to follow, when you try to chase your question, when you try to find the answer of your question, whatever you will be getting after that, that is called the new knowledge. And that is how science works. And it is applicable to all sorts of knowledge. I mean, whether you are working in social sciences, in psychology, in computer sciences, physics, chemistry, or in biology, the law is the same. The principle standard is the same. Whether you are doing a business, whether you are living as an uneducated person out there, the strategy, the principles, and the standards of developing new knowledge is constant. Having good observation, creating questions out of it, chasing the questions, creating hypothetical answers of those questions, trying and test your hypothesis, trying and test your supposed answers with the help of experimentation, and then believing and then selecting one of the answer as the answer of the problem. In science, we called it as a problem, but problem is not a very good word. Problem is a little bit a negative type of stuff, but whatever unusual, whatever stuff out there which you don't have any reason or don't have any explanation to answer, that can be considered as a scientific problem. So now we are dependent on other people. We look towards our teachers, we look towards our elders, we look towards the people who know. And that is the primary way. And that is, I think, one of the best way. And it was instructed in Quran as well, that you should seek and ask to those who know. And that's the primary way of getting the things done. There's a question asked to those people who have knowledge or expertise in that area. The next thing is that if you do have that, if you fail to find the answer from them, or if you fail to find such people, and then this is your turn. And to start triggering the cascade of developing the new knowledge. Okay, I will going to share certain examples with you in order to understand whatever I'm sharing with you guys. I have shared that cascade as well. So when we observe things, it starts from the observation. When we observe things, it will lead to create questions. You can ask a question, and then from that question you can create hypothesis. It's like some supposed answer. According to your understanding, according to your learning, according to the level of intellectual wisdom you are carrying, you can create certain supposed answers of that question. These are called as hypotheses. The next thing is to test that hypothesis with the help of an experiment. And the experiment will give you the data, and when you analyze the data, you will end up in two things. When you analyze the data, you will end up in two things. Either the data supports your answer. If the data supports your answer, then whatever you assume, that was correct. That was the answer of the question, answer of the problem. But if the data, an experiment tells you no, whatever you are assuming is not correct. So now you have two options to do. Actually, you should have multiple options in your head. But the one thing is that that whatever you are assuming, whatever the hypothesis you have created, that hypothesis was wrong. You have to change the hypothesis. The other potential problem might be that maybe you fail to create an appropriate experiment to test that hypothesis as well. So you need to review your work and then proceed further. But if you found the answer, yes, the next stop is to share that information with the rest of the world. That is what science communication. You need to share that thing with the rest of the world. You need to share that stuff in terms of publication, in terms of writing, and in terms of articles, thesis with the rest of the world. Okay, so let's start with a hypothesis that we have a visit at some place. There was a lake out there, and in that lake we found certain deformed frogs. It's unusual observation that a group of students was there in a mountain with a lake, and they found certain deformed frogs over there. Now these deformed frogs are there. It's an unusual observation by the students. It can trigger a lot of questions in the head. A lot of questions, because the normal frogs are not like that. The normal frogs are like this one, like the right side. So when they found these deformed frogs, the frogs without proper limbs, they create certain questions. Why the frogs are deformed? You can ask many possible reasons of them. Yes, create. What happens, which is actually responsible for these deformities? And then you will go and test and look for the answers. Before I proceed further, I want to test what comes into your head. Kya hua hoga? What happens with these frogs? Aapne suna pehle. The ones who, new students. Inke genes mein masla hoga. Student said inke genes mein. The fault is in their stars. It might be the fault in their stars. Gee, anybody else? That's why they are deformed. Shabash. So one point.
So pollutants can be there as well.
Okay, another student is telling me that there might be some pollutant over there. Koi garbad hai wahan pe, koi
Yes,
toxic material hai which is causing that trouble. Thank you. Ji. Pathreeli zameen tune pehle bataya tha, hai? You are not supposed to answer. Anybody jinhone pehle mujhe answer nahi kiya? Shabash. जिन्होंने भी कहा, क्या आपके ज़हन में आता है? What comes into your head? Frogs को क्या हुआ होगा? There might be a predator over there. There might be a shikari who is eating the frogs.
Yes, sir. Crocodiles can be there as well in the same lake.
Okay, there might be some toxic material. That's like a common understanding that we are developing. Something bad is out there. That bad might be toxin. That bad might be some radiation, something bad over there, which is causing these deformities. Something bad in the water, genetical causes, or a predator, or things like that. So these are the few hypotheses we can create based on our observation, which might be the answer of that question. It might be the answer, or it might not be the answer. Let's.
So can we also think that their diet may not be sufficient?
Their diet might not be sufficient.
There may be deficiencies in their diet of the.
Sarmat has adding the hypothesis that it might be because of they are not eating well, they are not having good diet. So we can test those hypotheses as well. Remember one important point in your head: when you create a hypothesis, whether it is fit for a hypothesis or not, that is very important. A hypothesis is only fit in the category of hypothesis if it is. We should have some means to verify that hypothesis through experimentation. If you cannot test a hypothesis with the help of an experimentation, that hypothesis is not considered, is not even a hypothesis. Something which can be, जैसे अभी सरबंद ने बताया, there might be an issue of diet. They're not eating well. That is why they have deformed legs. So can we test that hypothesis with the help of experimentation? क्या हम कोई ऐसा experiment design कर सकते हैं which can help us to test that hypothesis? The answer is yes. हम एक pool बना सकते हैं जिसमें हम frogs को कम food देंगे. We will give them less food than the normal frogs, and then we can observe whether they are developing the deformed legs or not. So it can be considered a hypothesis. How about thinking as a toxin present in the water. Can we consider it as a hypothesis? There is something bad in the water. Something bad means toxin, chemicals, pollutant, nuclear radiation, something waste over there. Can we test this thing as a hypothesis? Yes. How? If the pollutant is there, if the bad thing is there in the water, how about testing that water? How about chemically examine that water and go for analysis of that water to see whether it has something weird as compared to the normal water or not? If you found something weird over there, that can be the reason. That might also considered as a hypothesis. So first thing you need to do as a scientist, you need to collect the bad frog, the frogs with the deformities and the normal frog. You need to see how much deformities are there. 10%, 5% frogs are like this, 50% of frogs are like this. So you should have detailed description, count the number of frogs you can find, see and notice the deformities. If you observe things in a better way, you will be able to make better hypotheses. You will be able to make better interpretations. There is hell of the difference between people based on their observation. I can tell you, it's something very special. I don't know what the hell I am telling you right now, but that is somehow classify us from being different. We all look at the stars in the night, but I can tell you, every one of us is looking towards the same sky in different ways. I remember a quote of somebody else when we look at the stars. It was like, when you keep looking at the sky will start looking back at you at some time, after some time. So we can see the same things in a different way. That's what we are. We humans, we can analyze our chemical reactions in the mind in different ways. That's the beauty, the speciality we are having. We can observe the same phenomenon in different ways. We can see the same event in different ways. We can interpret the same things in a different way. One person is saying the other person is not fit. I can see he is not walking comfortably. His body language is not nice. He's not saying good hello, hi to me. A good observation or a strong observation means you can analyze all those things out of that person. And for the other person, it's like the same as yesterday. So in order to have a better observation, you need to have a better score, recording and all these things. That's why you can see the scientists and researchers, they're trying to put and note down everything going. A lot of things you can use in order to record your proceedings. You can speak, you can record, you can measure, you can note down. So nowadays, things are getting more scientific. If you remember the very famous movie, I Am Legend. Isn't it? Yes. I Am Legend. In I Am Legend, the scientist, he actually kept the camera on his head and he is speaking and recording his experiments at that time. You don't have time to write on all these things. So he is speaking and recording whatever, like मैंने इस वाले object को, subject को ये वाला injection दिया है, इस वाले subject को ये वाला injection दिया. The wonderful way, save time and energy, and in the future, that might be the way of recording experimentation. Anyway, so first you need to ask a lot of things, and you see that how is there are other organisms deformed too, or just because of the frog? It's just there's a specific problem with the frogs. So you need to have a very good observation and records of the things. Okay. So now first is that you need to understand what hypothesis is. As I explained, it should be an answer of the question. It should be the answer of the problem. We don't know whether your hypothesis is correct or not, but that should address the problem. The next thing is that it should be testable. That's very important. You can design an experiment to test it. Otherwise, we don't know whether hypothesis is correct or not. For example, I don't know. I always run short of time. I don't know why. For example, the Einstein presented a concept of theory of relativity. It was like a fascinating concept of that time, much ahead, even a century ahead. We still don't have any means. We still don't have any means to experimentally verify the theory of relativity in the laboratory. Not in a very obvious way. Somehow we can figure it out. It is there. But imagine 100 years ago, at that time, the people have no means to check whether the hypothesis is correct or whether it is wrong, because nobody can design any experiment to verify that hypothesis. So if an hypothesis is not testable, you cannot design any experiment to confirm that this is an answer of the question. but you don't have any other means to deny it as well. That is called as a theory. That is the concept of theory. So that is theory of relativity, theory of evolution. We can't design any experiment to rebut the concept of evolution. But we also cannot have any experimental design to confirm it in our laboratory, in our lifetimes. So these are things associated with the hypothesis. So first hypothesis, the deformities are caused by one or more chemical pollutants. Good, you are doing fine. The second, the deformities were caused by attacks from the parasite or another frog or another predator. It may be because of some other organism who is causing that harm. The hypothesis number 3, the deformities are caused by the increase in the exposure to the ultraviolet radiations or to the radiation in this region, because this mountain is present at a very high altitude. So maybe the exposure of ultraviolet radiation is very high in that place. It is causing the deformities in this frog, in these frogs. So let's try to test these hypotheses one by one. The first we can test very easily. How we can test the first one? Just analyze the water. If something bad out there in the water, it can be yes or it can be no. You can confirm it. How about the second one? Analyze whether a parasite or frog or another frog or a predator is there. You're able to find something, an activity which can contribute in the deformities or not. If you find it, your hypothesis is correct. If you fail to find any activity like this answer is incorrect. How about testing the hypothesis number 3? I'm moving a little bit faster because I have already explained the first two. In order to design test any hypothesis, in order to design any experiment, you need a variable as well as you need control. You should have a wonderful experimental design which can be tested anywhere in the world, not in your laboratory, not in your own hands. It can be tested at other places as well in the same way. Only after that it is considered as fact. So this is the experiment which they have designed in order to test the hypothesis number 3, that whether the ultraviolet radiations, increased exposure of ultraviolet radiation is the reason behind the deformities. So you can see there are 3 groups. The first is the control group. Control group means the frogs we will be raising without any treatment, without doing anything. They will be raised in a normal way. Control group number 2, we will deal with these things in a different way. Control group number 3, we are going to deal with these things with even in more different ways. Let's see. So all of these are leopard frogs. We have selected 100 eggs from those 100 different frogs. We will going to grow them. We are going to develop them, raise them in a controlled conditions to see whether an increased exposure of ultraviolet radiation is causing any trouble in the deformities or not. We allow them to grow or develop in a water tank of keeping the temperature constant. You need to make sure that everything else is constant. And then only one variable. All these 3 are the control factors. Otherwise, you're not able to put the blame on ultraviolet light if all these 3 variables are different. You need to make sure that everybody else, all the control variables are same, except the one you want to check. You want to check what? Ultraviolet radiation. So in the control experiment, control frog, you are not giving them any ultraviolet radiation. In the control group experiment number 2, you are giving and putting them under ultraviolet radiation for 15 days. And in the third group, you are putting them under ultraviolet radiation for 24 days. These are the good enough time that the frog can be hatched and undergo metamorphosis and can be converted into an adult frog. After that, you need to check and analyze your data. Analyze the frog. After that, grow them in these 3 different conditions. The first without ultraviolet radiation, the second with the ultraviolet radiation using a lamp for like 15 days, and then for the 24 days. And these are the results you can see. The first group, which was not given any ultraviolet radiation, no deformed frog was found there. No deformities were there. As expected, control group. The group of the frog eggs, which were placed for 15 days under ultraviolet radiation, they're also not showing any deformities. But the group of eggs which were placed under ultraviolet radiation for more than 15 days, they are showing increased, they are showing a lot of deformities in the limbs. Almost 50% of the frogs which were hatched at that time. They grow, they develop with deformed legs. And that observation can confirm that it is maybe because of the increased exposure of the ultraviolet radiation, which is causing the deformities in these frogs. And just for your knowledge, the ultraviolet radiations can affect the DNA, can change and destroy, and can cause mutations in the gene, in the DNA, in our genes. And ultimately that can affect the outcome, that can affect the physical outcome, the physical structures. If the genes of my skin gone bad, if the genes present within my skin cells are gone mad and gone bad, my skin will be damaged. Those cells will be damaged. Then can develop into cancer in worst situation. But if the genes present in the egg, which is going to become everything, receive the exposure. If the genes in the sperm, if the genes present in the egg produced by the female are exposed to ultraviolet radiation, that will going to create every other cell of the baby in the future. If the zygote, the first cell, receives exposure of ultraviolet radiation, which will going to become every cell of the baby, that can cause the deformities. So if something bad happens to my skin cells or other cells, they are called as somatic cells. Somatic cells, they already differentiated, they're already doing their job. If they receive ultraviolet radiation, they might be bad, they might be burned out, they might be gone mad and develop cancer. But what about the errors? If the genetical errors because of the exposure to ultraviolet light is inflicted to the germ cells. Germ cells means to the sperms or to the eggs. These sperms and egg will going to create the zygote. The zygote will carry the fault. The zygote will carry the trouble and the mutation, and that will be contributed in the development of the new baby. And we already observed that phenomena earlier. In the Hiroshima and Nagasaki case, not many people are dead because of the direct blast at that time. A lot of people actually were dead at that time. But those were dead because of the heat waves, because of the burning effects, because of the physical injuries of the collapse, because of the buildings got collapsed at that time. Physical injuries because of the exposure of the radiation. But there are other people who are living in the periphery. They were not dead because of the accident, but they were exposed. They received lots of radiation because of that accident. They survived because their somatic cells are fine, they're fine. But their body receives a lot of radiations. Some of them, many of them, those radiations able to mutate their genes. They cause trouble. If the mutation were there in the somatic cells, they are fine. But if these mutations at that time able to cause trouble in the sperm cells or in the egg cells, or I must say germ cells, what will happen? If they got married, if they're going to grow their baby, develop their babies will going to receive those errors and they will be deformed. And you might heard that story, that even after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the next generation and the next generation, they are receiving physical deformities in their structures because their forefathers were exposed at that time. And they choose to mate after that, and that errors are transferred to the next generation. Unavoidable after that. So that's the answer of that interesting question. But there might be several other factors might be contributing here. This is just answer of the one thing. There might be other things as well. The last thing is that you need to share that information with the rest of the world. Honestly, whatever you have observed, whether it is supporting your hypothesis or whether it is not supporting your hypothesis, that is absolutely fine. People believe that successful experiments are the experiments. The answer is no. It's the failed experiment which are the experiments actually, which are telling you this is not the way. You don't need to go this way. This is not an answer. There are 100,000 wrong ways out there, and there is only one correct way. So the failed experiments are helping you to narrow down, to find the right and the best way for you. So I believe, life of the scientists, they are actually troubling and dealing with the failed experiment. Most of the time their head is down, I can tell you, when they leave their labs. That's why they look very weird. That's why they might grow older very quickly, and they look very, I must say, isolated and nerd. Because I wish you understand the gravity of this sentence. Because the success they receive, it always fade. Always fade. The success they receive, it always fade. Even they don't believe whether it is a successful experiment or not. वो जो मूवीज में देखते हैं ना, ये एक रिसर्चर साइंसदान अपनी लेबोरेटरी में, ऐसा कभी नहीं होता. It never happens in the real laboratories. Never. They always ended up in their successful experiment after a series of experimentation. वो तो फिल्मों में होता है, वो मैंने इसका इलाज दरियाफ्त कर लिया, मैंने ये कर लिया. It's never happened in the lab. Most of the time, whenever they find the right answer,
how accustomed these scientists are to failure?
The success is always like fade. Not clear, unclear. But the failure is always clear. Crystal clear. It's like, so that's why they can, most of the time they feel that they are not getting things. It's a difficult path or a journey. So once you have done something, you need to share it with the rest of the world. You need to publish it so that everybody else in the world should be able to reproduce that thing. If whatever you have done is correct, whatever you have done is accurate, is a fact, the rest of the world will be able to produce it. And that after that, it will become part of the scientific literature, part of the human race for the rest of your life and the life of your children. And then after that, for example, this is one of the way how we share the data with the rest of the world. This is one of my paper. Oh, I told you it's my paper. This is my paper. So I have found certain thing that a protein, forget about it, CTCF is actually causing the cancer because it actually block the function of another protein called HOXA10. So once it blocks the function of HOXA10, the HOXA10 is no longer available, and that can increase the potential of breast cancer in people. This is one of the discoveries. So I need to design certain experiment to confirm it, to prove it, and then share it with the rest of the world, whatever I am believing is right or wrong. If the rest of the world is following whatever I have, whatever I have observed, they will going to reproduce my work. It will be cited, and cited again, and that will become part of the human literature. But if another people, they try to reproduce it, they fail to find the same answer, they're able to get new answer, then they can rebut it. And we have a new theory, we have a new concept, we have a new reality out there. And that is how science grows. And I should be thankful, I should be the one who should accept that fact as well. So that is how we share. If you Google that statement, you should be able to end it up in my paper. Oh, I'm sure you will not be able to download it. They will ask you for $65 to download that paper, but that you can get it from my website. But you don't need to read that paper. It's not for you. It's not for the biology 100 students. So that's it for the scientific lecture, scientific method today. If you have any question, please feel free. This is your time to ask question to me.
Sir, I have a question.
Ji, shabash.
So, like, how accustomed these scientists are to the failure? Like, don't they have the issues which other people do have in other jobs,
Yes.
like ego issues? Like,
yes.
Failure can be very damaging to ego.
They're not normal people. Samad, they are not normal people. That is the problem these people are having. That is the problem these people are having. They are not normal people. Because unfortunately, we are living in a world, or I must say, living in a community. I'm not talking about the rest of the world. I believe that there are people over there in South Korea. I observe in Europe. I observe. They respect a lot to the efforts of these people. यार आप cell phone use कर रहे हैं, मतलब आप respect नहीं करेंगे उस बंदे को जिसने इसको create. आप fan enjoy कर रहे हैं, आप AC enjoy कर रहे हैं. You are having a wonderful clothes over there. There are people who have consumed their human hours in order to create all these things for you. So they have a lot of respect for the researchers and the scientists over there. But the problem is that we assume that acting as a good scientist, a lot of people believe like this. If you want to work as a good scientist, you will not be able to work as a good parent. You might not be able to work as a good husband. You might not be able to act as a good person. So that is why all these things came into our head when we imagine scientists. We can't imagine a person who is playing guitar. Am I right? A scientist doing research is also playing guitar. We can't imagine this thing. You know? I will share that video with you someday. It's possible. But somehow we started believing these things because this is not a very exciting career for many of us. Contributing or generating new knowledge is not a very exciting career. It's a tough job. It's a difficult thing, difficult terrain to sail. So